Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Accelerating Success Forum. I am your host, Greg Levy. I'm an Associate Dean at the University of Miami Law School and also direct our Entertainment, Arts, and Sports Law program. Honored to be moderating this panel with our distinguished guests. The Accelerating Success Forum is dedicated to constructive dialogue, the exchange of ideas, and collaboration with the intention of enhancing the well-being of athletes and the sports industry at large. We've all heard the story of the broke athlete, even with multi-million-dollar contracts, marketing deals, and sponsorships. Many attribute this to poor management, lack of education, and other causes, which we'll explore today. So today's session, we're going to address the challenges athletes face in the financial space, debunk myths, and explore opportunities to change this narrative. So first, let me introduce our guests. First up is Matthew Hatchett. Matthew is CEO of Hatchett Films. He's an 8-year NFL veteran, having played for the Minnesota Vikings, New York Jets, and Jacksonville Jaguars. He's the co-host of Get Your Popcorn Ready with Terrell Owens. Matthew, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, brother. Appreciate it.
Next up is Clifton Addison. Clifton is a graduate of South University Law School. He's a contract advisor with Agency One Sports Group. He has 8 years of experience as a sports agent and certified NFLPA contract advisor. Clifton, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Last but not least, Rory Wilfork. Rory is the managing director of the private client group of SCS Financial. He has over 20 years of experience in the investment business. Prior to joining SCS, Rory was at Goldman Sachs in their private client group. He's a member of the Columbia University Board of Visitors, where he earned his BA in economics and was a 2-time captain of the football team. He went on to play for the Arizona Cardinals before moving into finance. Rory, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks for having me.
All right, so first I want to start. Sports Illustrated once estimated that 78% of NFL players are either bankrupt or under financial stress within 2 years of retirement, and 60% of NBA players are broke within 5 years of leaving the sport. So I'm going to start with this simple question. Why do athletes go broke? Who wants to jump in first?
Well, I'll jump in first. From an agent's perspective, I saw this firsthand, and I think it all comes down to education. Finance is definitely education, and these guys, go from zero, right? Finances, when you have zero, there's no reason for you to, put education on finance at the top of the totem pole. Then they go from millionaires. I had clients who needed to borrow money a week after the season because they blew a couple of $1 million. So I would say the biggest issue is just financial education.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback on that. If you're taking in a 19, 20-year-old college kid, we were all broke in college, right? And we didn't have nothing. And then before that, prior to our high school, what were our parents doing? If our parents weren't teaching us about finance and opening us a bank account and things like that, where would we learn that skill from, right? Because the high schools don't teach it. The colleges, they don't want to get in depth of where you're headed in your future. So you're not learning it. All of a sudden you're 23 years old and not just the money's dumped on you, it's the expectation of what to do with your money. Well, as an athlete, we say, well, I need to buy stuff with our money. That's what we think, I haven't had the shoes I wanted. I hadn't had the car I wanted. I hadn't had all the clothes I wanted. And now here's an opportunity to do that. Why wouldn't I buy it? Oh, I'm supposed to invest this money. Nobody told me that, So again, it's just the lack of knowledge at that age of 23, which if you go across America, I think 98% of all 23-year-olds will probably blow their money from the ages of 23 to 27, 28 years old. I don't care how much you have.
I couldn't agree more. Just to add a fine point on it, and from my seat, sort of the financial advisor seat, literacy and financial literacy education, however you want to describe it, is the key. And it doesn't matter how much you have. And I look back to when I started my professional career, post getting cut from the Cardinals, I sit in a seat, I fill out a bunch of forms. Someone tells me I should be saving for retirement through my 401k. I was like, that sounds like a reasonable idea. But now I have a menu of options to invest that money, but I have no idea what to select. And so the key is, though, I'm not making that much money yet. So I have my 20s, as Matt stated, to make all these mistakes, but I can recover from them because in my 30s, 40s, and 50s, those are my higher earning years. If you flip that on its head and you're an athlete, your highest earning years are in your 20s. Your mistakes are much more amplified, and you don't have the time really to recover it. Most of these athletes aren't going to make as much or more as they made during their playing years. So it's not just an athlete problem.
True.
And that's great. I mean, that's the stage for some. We're going to dive into those topics in more detail. But let me ask a question. So every athlete has a team around them, right? So maybe I'll start with Matthew. Like, what does that team look like, and how did you go about building your team? The people who advise you, the people who manage you around you.
A financial literacy team?
No, like agent, manager, financial advisor. Like, what did that team look like, and how did you know about to go about building it?
You didn't know. You don't know how to build it at 23. I can tell people now because I already went through it.
Yeah.
But at 23, you don't know how to build it because, as you know, we can go through a list of names, and there's financial advisors who have taken off with players' money, right? So, we're hearing go get a financial advisor. Okay, well, then 10 years later, nobody's around when the financial advisor took off with your $10 million. So is that the right thing to do? No, that's not the right thing to do. It's to educate yourself. Again, if it's going to be you and your mom and your uncle or whoever your team is, it's the education of that team more than the agent says, go out and do this. The financial advisor says, go out and do this. I don't think you do any of it. Personally, every athlete that I talk to now, I say, don't spend a dime and focus on your sport, period. Like it doesn't get no simpler. Are there investments? Are there good? There's all of that stuff out there. But until you can put the energy on focusing on how real estate can make money, how the market can make money, which we all know as ex-players, when we focus on something, we'll get it. But we're not going to focus on that because we're focused on ball. So since you're focused on ball, just don't spend the money. That's your safest bet.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, I actually don't. I think that's a more reasonable path than the alternative in a lot of cases. I do think there are really good financial advisors out there. I think it is the minority that are sort of running off with folks' money, but it does happen. But I also think financial advisors end up being overly conservative because they end up being more concerned about not getting fired and not making an error than they are with providing the same advice they would provide to a non-athlete that they do to an athlete. I mean, I tell athlete clients this all the time, particularly in the sort of pitched prospecting phase where I'm trying to convince them that they should work with me. You often hear, what other athletes do you work with? And what I say is, do you want your money managed how other athletes manage their money?
Right.
Or people manage their money? I'm not in the athlete business. 90% of my clients are not athletes. And, I want to work with athletes who are in a position, they want to listen, they want to learn, and they want to really sort of protect and grow their wealth.
Clifton, you want to add anything on that?
Yeah, as an agent, I always encourage my clients to have a strong relationship with their financial advisors, and even a stronger relationship than I have as an agent, because these are the guys that's holding onto your assets and telling you how to invest your money. And that's extremely important for now and the future, and your lineage, your kids, etc. And I also encourage players, you're never too old or too successful to invest in your education. And I think that a lot of players should invest in learning the basic life skills of money. You're never too old to learn how to budget, right? To understand what cash flow is, to understand how much money to save. I've been in a lot of meetings with financial advisors, and these financial advisors, they talk to clients, and sometimes they're talking over their heads. And I think that financial advisors should think about dumbing it down a little bit to come at the level of where a player could really understand what's going on. So that's my opinion.
I agree with, sorry, Greg, I just want to, because I agree with that point. Every industry has its jargon, right? And the way I describe it is, I play football, not basketball. I go and you give me a basketball playbook, it's going to have all these,
Right.
boxes and arrows and information, things that I need help deciphering from a coach. And so I want someone to treat me as someone trying to learn about the game of basketball and X's and O's. I treat my clients the same way when educating them about finances. It's a new playbook, but they can get it.
Absolutely. Can I ask you both this as well? Do you think that when they get to the NFL, it's too late, or the NBA, whatever, professional sports, is that too late, in your opinion, not to start learning, but to really plant that first seed? Because I'm finding it as maybe freshmen in college, maybe in high school, I think it's more influential on that athlete.
So I don't think it's ever
too late.
Yeah.
Right.
But I also, I think I'm a bit older than you guys, not a ton older, but when I was in high school, like, we had home economics. That's something that doesn't even exist in our curriculums anymore.
Right.
And back in the 80s or early 90s, what that meant was they teach you how to balance a checkbook, scramble an egg, write a letter, how to draft an envelope, like fundamental skills that you need just to live your life. And I think the modern day version of that is, what's a credit card? How to, what does the interest on student loan really mean? How to save, how to budget, those types of things. There's lots of information out there. And I would love to see it in our public school systems, broadly speaking.
Absolutely. I think the earlier the better. And I also saw some universities taking the initiative to work with their collegiate athletes to talk about investing. I think that if you have a player who's generating a certain amount of money financially to the program, you should invest in educating that player as well. So I think that that's important, getting into them early. But at the end of the day, it's never too late, because the responsibility is going to be on you. When that headline comes out 5 years after you retire and they're like, you're broke, they're not going to be like, oh, he was born to a single parent. He grew up in the project. They're going to have your name on there, and you're going to have to own that. So I think that every player should take individual responsibility and take care of their business, irrespective of what background or what situation they come from.
So this is like such a good transition to the next section. I want to just talk about this as systemic problems, right? And I think one of the myths that I think we want to bust is, is this an athlete problem, or is this an American problem, right? And when we think about, obviously, athletes are in the public eye and we hear about this more often, but let's talk about that education. There was an article I read for Teach for America that said around 17%, I think it was 1 in 6 high schools teach some type of financial literacy course. When you take that to lower income communities, it's down to 3.9%, right? So let's take that back to high school and middle school, and like, where do we need to start that? So somebody want to jump in on that?
I'll jump on that. I went to an inner city school, Northwestern. If anybody's familiar with Miami, it's across the street from the Pork and Beans projects. I happened to go to that school because I was in the magnet program. So I was bused from the suburbs. So I had a very interesting experience to see things from both sides of the fence. So I think that absolutely it deals with you just being a product of your environment. If your mother only makes a certain amount of money and she's struggling to pay the bills, she's not going to invest time on the internet looking at the stock market, trying to see if she made some money off Bitcoins, when she's just trying to put food on the table. And I think all of that transitions down to the kids. And a lot of these players, they have been blessed with talent where people invest in them so much that they don't have to do things for themselves. I've, helped, guys transition to the NFL. Some of these guys never booked a plane ticket on their. So me asking them to manage millions is a lot. Yeah. And that's something that they're thrust into. So I definitely feel that being a product of your environment has a big impact on your financial literacy, and it puts you at a steep disadvantage.
Yeah, growing up, again, I never had a bank account. Like I said, my mom it's week to week paycheck. had no idea on how much she was even struggling, because again, we're just trying to eat. As long as we eat, we think we're rich. And it's funny, I was talking to some guys the other day, and it was, I grew up outside of Cleveland, Ohio, live in LA now, and I coach at a lot of private schools, coach football at private schools. And the way I viewed rich kids back in the day is if they had braces. If the kid had braces, I thought they were crazy rich. Right. And I'm just saying, now it's like that's how, I guess, so far behind we were on our economic, progression. But again, I had no idea what to do when I was 23 years old because of, again, my mom didn't know what to do. There's nobody saying, do this, open account, investment, interest. I had none of those. That verbiage never even resonated in my brain.
So, and I put another fine point on it. So I grew up in Carroll City. I went to Norland High School.
Okay.
We took a couple off of here and
We
there.
beat y'all a couple of times.
But to the point, single mom, week to week, all I heard in my house was try to hold the same job as long as you can, and I'm relying on my pension and Social Security to retire. So that was the plan. It's just like, I just got to hold on to this job. And she was fortunate enough to be in a job that has a pension. That's kind of gone away now too. Unless you work for the government, pretty much you're on your own 401k. So I think the problem is more societal and systemic in nature. But like everything, with income inequality and other disparities, it's amplified within Black communities. Mm-hmm. But there's poor white folks out there dealing with the same issues. I think it's societal, mostly societal.
True.
And I think, particularly like you said, in communities of color, we also talk about generational wealth and whether generational wealth is there. It's often not there, right? And it's not passed down. And what impact does that have on this conversation? So I think it's like, is our educational opportunities not there because, I guess, does generational wealth and money provide educational opportunities, I guess is my question. Or is it the opposite way around? So how do you look at that, Rory?
I definitely think generational wealth, is going to give that family for years upon years so many more opportunities. Because again, we know getting into a college was going to be tough, and since we didn't play ball, we probably were not going to college, right? But you're telling me now that all of my kids can go to college because our family has money? That's a huge difference. And we're talking about not, 5 kids. We're talking about, 25, 50 kids over time. I think that's a huge difference and a huge advantage. And of course, I hadn't even heard of the term, generational wealth maybe 10 years ago. Now it's like, you want to pass down. You want your family, your nieces and nephews to start thinking how you're thinking at 30 and 40. Try to get them to think like that at 10 and 12. And they'll be a lot, I won't say happier, but they'll be a lot more financially stable at 25 and 30 than we probably were.
The generational wealth definitely, gives you a head start. Think about it, right? When you see an athlete get his first check, what does he do? I'm about to buy mama his house, car. So if they had generational wealth, they could start investing in their legacy and not investing backwards. I think that's a big issue in our community. There's a real thing called survivor's guilt, right? When you grow up in a community where you had, lack of resources and you make it, everybody leans on you to pull everybody forward. And that's another issue. So I definitely feel those are some big points that need to be considered and addressed in the sports world.
And I also think people think generational wealth means millions and millions of dollars. Like there's generational educational transfer as well. Like even if it's just having enough money to pay for college for a kid, like that's a massive weight off the shoulders. Like, most people think generational wealth means, I'm set and future generations are set. No, there's a lot in between there. Just going from lower class to middle class or middle class to upper middle class, like you're setting your family's trajectory, you're changing the trajectory meaningfully. Like my kids going to private school, what they're exposed to is just completely different than what I learned and when I learned it, frankly, which was not until college.
Yeah. And then at 23, those ages 23 to let's say 30, you're investing in your money instead of spending it on on all the stuff. That's a huge difference. That again, now you have a head start. Whether you play or work those first 5-10 years, you have 500,000 or 5 million in the bank instead of blowing that 500. It's a huge difference for your lifestyle.
That's right.
Absolutely. And also to add, if you already have those resources, you're going to be taught how to manage those at an early age. So when you do come into ownership of them, you know exactly what to do. Some guys don't even know how to build a credit score. I'm just being honest. So
I didn't learn till I was after 30, to be honest with you, right? I didn't know from 23 to about 31, 32. I'm like, credit? Since you have millions, you're like, my credit should be 800. Right?
And that's exactly. Why do I need credit? I got cash.
Right.
So I mean, it's a big educational curve.
I mean, you guys just, hit on that. I mean, a lot of what you just said was really going to be the next question I was going to dive into. So, I mean, a couple stats I also read was that 40% of the country, if they had $400 in unexpected expenses for a month, they wouldn't be able to cover that, which is amazing, right, to think about in that context. Let's talk about, I want to shift a little to college and the NCAA, and we're on the cusp of some really important changes with name, image, and likeness, and this is going to really change the NCAA in all of our lifetimes. Certainly, the most impactful thing that's happened. But let's just start the athlete student or student athlete. What is it, Matthew? Do you want to start off with that?
It's student athlete. I think the skills we learn as a student is going to carry us a lot longer. During that, I guess we're talking financially, right? Now, the athlete portion to me is important because it's going to give you those tools, how to manage your time, your work ethic. All of those things if you add those two together, you can be successful. But it's definitely student athlete with anything that's going on in college. Again, we have our what's the E-League now, where the kids are going to choose either the E-League or go overseas or go to college. Like, they're really starting to say, forget about college. Right. Not that they don't want to learn, not that they don't want to go to school. They're looking at that dollar. Right. But if you can educate them while they're in the E-League, or if they go to Europe, if they're getting an education, that is a better scenario than going to college, in my opinion.
What about but we hear so many stories about, it is, the NCAA likes to say student athlete, but can you really be a student, right? I mean, your full-time job is being, the hours that you're expected to pour into your team and to the craft of being an NCAA college athlete is tremendous. You don't really have the same opportunities to take advantage of the educational opportunities on a college campus, or do you? I mean, Matthew, I'd love to hear what your take is on that.
Again, I think personally the money is so much right now. The LeBron scenario, I think, has changed everybody's perspective because he has employed 3 of his friends. They got educated through the process. This is not the 20, 30 years ago, my boys hang out and we go blow money, right? They took classes and courses and talked to the brightest minds in the world in order to set their team up. And there's very few athletes right now who are 19 and 20 who are about to become successful who are not taking that landscape. They're looking at LeBron saying, no, we're going to take this serious and we're going to build it through education. Just because my education is not from Duke doesn't mean I'm not getting educated. And I think that's what people have to understand.
Does anyone else want to jump in on that?
And I think the whole college industry, not just NCAA, but the industry of education too, given how expensive it's gotten, even non-athletes are now doing the calculus. Like, you learn to write code and can build an app at 16, 17.
Yeah.
There's competitions out there now where you can win a couple $100,000, get a job. You're like, why do I need college? I'm doing exactly what I want to do. I'm doing what I'm meant to do. College, isn't it there to really teach me these skills and prepare me for a career or a job in the workforce? If I'm already on that path, then what am I getting out of college? Now, I think college has other benefits from a maturity perspective and relationship building perspective, but the economics aren't quite there anymore.
There's all these micro credentials popping up, and particularly in the tech industry, right? And yeah, I mean, it's really, yeah. Anything else you want to add on that?
I'll just add, it's going to be interesting to see how, with the new switch of laws, how collegiate players could start getting marketing, et cetera, how that changed the landscape of how college athletes operate. I'm, interested in seeing how that goes, and it changes the game for sports agents as well, because it gives us the opportunity, if we could land a big marketing gig for a guy in college, the likelihood of him signing with us would be a lot higher. So that's something else to just keep on the radar and see how that changes the game.
So with that, right, so college athletes are now going to be able to monetize their name, image, and likeness. California was really the first that led the legislation, I think 2024. Florida jumped in, I think it's July of this year. It's going to go into effect. So now we're waiting for the NCAA to kind of come out with some final guidance, and there's some federal legislation that's pending. I know Cory Booker's been behind some of it, but what do you think is important in crafting those rules in terms of looking out for the financial interests of the athletes? What should the NCAA, if you were advising the NCAA or these legislators, like what do you think is important?
The NCAA needs to stay as far away as possible. They're too one-sided, right? Mm-hmm. The school has an interest, right? The family, the people around them, right? The agents, the financial advisors, they have more of a fair decision for that kid. Mm-hmm. NCAA is they're muddying the waters, in my personal opinion. And again, when the kid drives a Ferrari to class at 19, it's over. It's going to be at that point, you can't tell that kid nothing. And again, NCAA can't do nothing, but his college coach can. His, agent can, his financial advisor can, his marketing guy can. They can say, have some type of opinion, but the NCAA, they're going to have nothing to do with it.
I think one thing that they need to watch out for is, these companies taking advantage of collegiate kids, right? And I think a rule should be set place where if he signs a contract, it should die once he transitions to the professional level, because his marketability might go up. And he might have the potential to earn even more money. Mm-hmm. So I think that, they really need to do a deep dive into this thing and make sure it's thorough and make sure, there's nothing that's going to hurt a collegiate athlete in the long run.
Rory, what about financial literacy and education? Like, should this be part of this? Should there be requirements if you're going to get NIL money?
Yeah, I don't know. I view it, I try to think of it through the lens of, what's going on in other sports where you get young athletes like tennis or soccer, where you see young athletes. I'm like, why should we treat them any differently than someone more mature? That's a good point. If they're in a position to sign a deal and the people around them are negotiating the deal, that's a contract. And so if you decide that, Cliff, in your example, his marketability just increased, well, the company took the risk that would happen and they locked them in here. So don't sign as long of a contract, or because you could also fall off a cliff and, break your ankle and never amount to anything, and the company is still holding the bag. So I think it cuts both ways. I would rather it be a more of a free marketplace where companies, talent, and the team around the talent, they try to negotiate and figure out the best deal for themselves.
And again, I've talked to people in my space, and again, this is for both of you as well. You guys want to talk after this, definitely let me know. Yeah. But it definitely has to have a team or a program where you're going to go to every university across America, and you're going to be able to talk to 18 to 22-year-old athletes and say, this is what you're about to make. This is what you should be doing with your money, and or how can I help you? That program has to be implemented at every single university. I would love if us three can put together a team of 30 people and go get these millions of athletes in college, but of course they're going to try to cut us out and do it.
Let's talk after this.
Right? Like that has to happen. If they're not trying to do that, they're trying to set these kids up for failure.
Yeah. This will be the next money grab.
Yeah.
The NCAA, it'll be someone else.
So many, I know, like once we kind of go pro, and many of the leagues, through collective bargaining, have educational benefits, right, for athletes, and whether that's continuing your education, finishing a degree, maybe some certificate programs, and then also, maybe some postgraduate MBA type work. Is that working? Are people taking advantage of it? Matthew, did people talk about that in the locker room? Tell me what you're taking, or is it just PR?
Yeah, it's we always want the leagues to do more. We never think that they do more. And then as in the locker room, you're saying, after practice, we have a 5:30 p.m. after practice. This group comes in and talks to us. But then as an athlete, you're like, man, I just want to go get my treatment and go home. So it's a give or take. The athletes need to try more. Maybe it's an off-season thing, but there's still more that the leagues can do, but they have to really shove it down a player's throat for them to really eat that information and understand what they're trying to get out of it.
I think it probably also it happens more when it starts to set in that the career is towards the end, that there's a rush to try to take advantage of it rather than it being an ongoing kind of thing. Sure.
Clifton, you have anything on that? Do you?
I think the league could do a better job with having more regularly, seminars for players dealing with retirement, and also looking at the mental and psychology of it. I think that, I try to preach to all my clients, football has a start and end date. So we need to start talking about some of the things that you're interested in doing now. And I think that, I think somebody picked up on this. A lot of guys rush to do something, and that's why a lot of guys go broke. I don't think it's necessarily guys just wasting money in the strip club and the club buying bottles. I think a lot of guys make a lot of bad investments. Mm-hmm. They open up a restaurant and they have no experience in a restaurant. That's the recipe for disaster. So I think that that's a big issue, and they really should deeply invest in helping guys plan out their career. And I think that it will be a tremendous comeback on the NFL as well.
So I know my rookie year, we had the first rookie symposium where it was kind of a talk like that, right? It was the very first one. It was great. And we had all this information. And then like about 3-4 years ago, I interned at the NFL office. Mm-hmm. I was like, why don't we have an exit symposium? Because the guys were leaving. Like, when I left, I had no idea about the annuities. I had no idea the health insurance. You have none of these things that you're supposed to know. And unless your agent is really calling you every single day, and again,
most guys don't do that.
They don't do that. So again, the NFL, I was like, you guys need to pay for the player, bring them all out here to somewhere. And like say, you take your 20, 30 guys, 4 or 5 different cities every year, because that's the only way they're going to be like, you know what? It is over. I do need to start looking on the players portal and talking to my ex teams, but until that happens, like the NFL needs to force feed that to those players.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I also think, and it's something I try to impart on my clients, which is you have to take advantage of the leverage that you have when you're most relevant. Mm-hmm. So as a current player, whether it's endorsement deals and even forget things that actually generate money for you, but establishing relationships with people when you're a current player, because that's when they're most responsive and most interested in you, frankly. Once you're out of the game and you've transitioned, the responsiveness to your texts and calls diminish.
They don't hit you right back no more.
Right back anymore. So take advantage while you have the leverage, you have the access to get the knowledge. But I love that idea of it as sort of an exit symposium. In '97, it wasn't as formal as the symposium is today, but I kind of grew it as well. And, you sit in a room, Frankly, it was a white dude in a suit with a PowerPoint presentation telling you everything you should and shouldn't do. And I had set up a financial literacy curriculum effectively, and I didn't want to be the black guy in a suit standing up in front of a room with a bunch of guys telling them everything they should do. So I did a pilot program with the 49ers. A friend of mine that I used to work with on Wall Street is now in the front office there. And I initially said, yeah, I'll come and talk about all these things that are important to the guys. But 2 weeks before I went, I called my guy and I was like, I don't think it'll work. I think it should be one-on-ones, 30 minutes to an hour. Let's figure out where these guys are, what they have. If they have a financial advisor, let's come up with a list of 5 to 10 questions they can go back and ask to make sure their guy is doing what he's supposed to be doing. And one guy came in, tell a quick story, second-year player, didn't have a checking or savings account. He was cashing his game checks at the check cashing place.
Wow.
Because he said his family didn't trust banks. And so in the financial crisis in 2008, family got house foreclosed on, they got kicked out, they lost their home. And there was just this sort of mentality within his family, never trust financial institutions. So I feel like I changed the course of that guy's life just by, I canceled the rest of the day and we walked over to the City National Bank and opened up a savings account. It was like at least $250, at least at the time, at least $250,000 is secure, safe and secure no matter what. There's insurance for it. And then let's start to foundationally kind of change the mentality around some of these things. So I think it's funny that we just keep coming back to education though, right? It's just having having the person delivering the message in a way that the person will be able to receive it and understand it and not talking above their level.
So in terms of planning for the future, I think this was referenced earlier, like athletes are highly motivated. They have tremendous drive, they're focused, they're the absolute top of the craft on the field. So how does that translate then to off the field, right? How does that translate into business? Should those skills translate more, and maybe why do they don't sometimes? So I don't know, does somebody want to jump in on that topic?
Well, shoot, I know why they don't translate, because you guys let me know. I would say 50% of the ex-players still think they're a player. You're not a player anymore. You have to approach it. If you want to be in the real estate, you have to, let's say you were 14 when you started working out, trying to get to the league, and then you made it at 24. That's 10 years. You're not going to just retire and be a real estate, expert in a year. You're not going to be a tech expert in 2 years. You're not going to be, can't go into communicate. You can't do none of that stuff in 6 months, but your success on the field, I got this thing figured out. No, you don't, because you're going up, like you said, you're going up against the top in the other, lanes. Like, you have to educate yourself in that, and you have to go do that for years. And then you'll get better at doing that. And then you can become a Hall of Famer in real estate, or you can become a Hall of Famer in tech, but you got to put in that work. And I think the success, of course, you had your names being screened by millions and you're doing commercials, you're on TV, all that stuff. I think people forget that, that's the bubble. That's a fake life that we live in, for that minute of time.
And I think to jump on that point too, from that age of 14 till you're done in the league, you're done professionally too, every day pretty much is spelled out for you. You know where you have to go, where you have to be. Someone's telling you exactly what to do. And then when you're done, there's none of that. And figuring out how to direct those energies is really hard. Guys don't know what they're passionate about.
Yeah,
they have to find it.
Yeah, just to add to that, NFL guys, not to offend anybody, you guys got a lot of pride. A lot.
Right. Gotta let that go.
and just like you're used to, you're polarized, you're on TV, etc. Some people don't feel comfortable saying they don't know something. So like I said before, a lot of guys lose a lot of money making bad investments. They'll get into the real estate game, invest a whole bunch of money and lose it. Get into the restaurant business, invest a whole bunch of money and losing it. So you have to recalibrate and be real with yourself. This is a new career, and I have to educate myself. And the fallacy is that the only success you have is on the field. There's a lot of success stories of guys even making more money off the field.
Yes.
And letting your money work for you. So I think that, we really have to change the narrative, and we have to enforce how important it is to educate yourself and having those hard conversations with our clients. And I think that's something that, I pride myself on as an African-American agent. And, you always hear the cautionary tales of, these numbers that you just spoke about, 80% of athletes 5 years after they retire going broke. These are guys who grew up in my community. We're from down south. All these guys come from here. Yeah. And it's sad to see a guy go from hero to zero.
Yeah.
So, you got to have those hard conversations, and you can't be afraid to recalibrate, get yourself together, and just start over.
And again, a lot of the younger guys I talk to, it's really black and white. If they have a 10-year career, I'm like, how many times did you ever show up to practice late? I'm like, 0. I would never show up to practice late. Well, why would you show up to a meeting late?
Absolutely.
It's the same thing, until they start to understand that, that sense of urgency, then they're not going to really understand, for the most part, on how to get that meeting. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, that pride point is why I shifted it to one-on-ones versus a big presentation of the group. I was like, there's no way these guys are going to be transparent and open and honest about what they have going on in front of their peers. It's just not going to happen. And Matt, something you also, or Matthew, I don't know.
I got my hatch, but it's all good.
You talked about, when your playing career was done and how, all the mistakes you made. It's also, even though you've seen it happen and you can talk to these guys from the place of knowledge and experience, it's still hard for them to listen to you.
Yeah.
You're just an old head that made all these mistakes. That's not going to be me. Like, it really, that hubris is real.
Yeah. And all you're trying to do is cut the learning curve, because again, some guys will, like, a week after, they don't want to listen. A month after, they don't want to listen. Some of them 10 years after don't want to listen. Well, those ain't the guys we talk. We
never gonna reach them.
We all have ex-teammates like, man, I would just call him, but he ain't gonna listen. He ain't just pick up the phone, call the NFL. They're gonna do so much. They don't even want to make those calls. So we all know there's only gonna be so many people that we can help. But again, that's why we're here. We're trying to do our part.
Yeah.
So Matthew, what was like when you decided you were going to get into the entertainment space? Like, what was that process like for you in terms of educating yourself to the industry and making that transition?
My sports agent at the time was Dwayne Martin, again, actor, producer, doing films in the industry. And I wanted to lose myself in something, because in football, I ate, drank, slept football. And when that was done, everybody, take a vacation, go figure out your life. And I was like, I was the opposite. I wanted to wake up at 5 a.m. and engulf myself into something all day and be tired like I was in training camp and pass out at 9, 10 o'clock at night. And I did that with the entertainment industry. So I just, the movie making, I wanted to learn how to make a film. So how do you make a film? I don't know. I just went and took out to lunch every director, producer, writer, agent, studio exec, anybody that through my career that I got to know, got a business card or a friend of a friend. I just took them out. I probably did that for about a year and a half, and just educated myself on what to do. And, by the grace of God, I had a nice team put around me. And again, my first business partner was Brad Furman, a big studio director now. So that process, again, it was the work to me that I was putting in is why I got something successful out of it.
So as we see more high profile athletes, in the business world, very publicly, like, LeBron and KD, and, we're seeing this during their playing careers, after their playing careers, right? Do you think that this is becoming, like, this business ethos is becoming more embedded in sports culture when 14, 15-year-olds, like you said before, Matthew, are thinking about the league? Are they also thinking about the business side of it too now? Because
for sure.
Yeah.
Again, LeBron has the blueprint, because everybody wants to be LeBron. Okay. Before that, Jordan was that guy for us, right? Us growing up. Again, Clifton, you look a little young. You might know.
Come on, man. You don't see this beard, man? This wisdom here, man.
But again, Magic Johnson, Jordan, now LeBron, and again, you have Steph Curry and Durant doing all these tech companies, and every guy who's making over 100, 200 million is doing a tech company,
Absolutely.
a movie entertainment company, so that being out there and being accessible to everybody, because even when Magic was doing it, we might see a commercial, but we couldn't go Google on, the amount that Magic was making or the investment team that was behind it. We didn't have that information. Now that's at your fingertips. And again, the people that are around, except, on this panel, they can just text their player, say, did you hear that deal about what Bron just did? Yeah. Did you hear the deal about Jay-Z? Yeah. Like everything is circulating, via social media. So we have all that information in front of us right now. And these kids, as we know now, the 22 to 28-year-old, millennials, I guess they're called, right? They have an opportunity to change the trajectory of the world because of the large amount of money that they'll all be making.
Right. And I think there has been a change in the culture as well with the Black Lives Matters movement. I think, more athletes took pride in even having representation from African-American agents, right? I think last year was the first time that there were more African-Americans representing first-round players than ever in NFL history. And I think, with the access to internet, more people are driven to have ownership of what they had. And these players are learning that these entities invest in me. I could leverage that and create my own thing and make more money. So I think that our culture is changing tremendously. You see Jay-Z with his, half of his champagne company was bought out by LVMH, which is the biggest luxury brand in the world. And, it's on the internet, and more people are getting it. Like, hey, it's not about, buying those things. It's about owning those things. And that's how you make more money, having ownership. So I think all of those things come into play and have a big impact.
And I think that information, democratizing information has leveled the playing field quite a bit. It's like now there's more of an awareness that the three of us, as an example, even exists. It's like, and so I think they feel more empowered to go find their agent, go find their advisor versus being found. Because to me, it just works out better if you're an educated consumer and shopper and you're like, I want to see what the landscape is and make the decision for myself versus the guy that I met at the Senior Bowl. Who sponsored the tent. It's like, okay, that's great, but he's seeking you. He's there for a reason. He's showing you all these shiny things in order to woo you. But if you took a step back and said, well, I want to be an educated consumer and go seek out the advice that I want versus the opposite.
Yep. All right, we're going to go to a couple of the questions that have been chatted in now. So we're coming down to the end. So Jeremy asks, how would you recommend athletes go about sourcing opportunities for investment outside of stocks and bonds?
So a financial guy.
Yeah. So there's a lot of ways, but it goes back to education. There's varying degrees of access that financial advisors have to, private deals, and not all private deals are created equal. And it's about the team that is investing in, be it real estate, be it venture capital, private equity. Those are the high octane areas and the areas that you want to be in. But there's lots of barriers. There traditionally have been tons of barriers to entry in order to invest in those things. Athletes and celebrities have a unique opportunity to be able to invest in those areas because a lot of these companies like having their names on their, not to use a Wall Street term, but on their cap table to be an investor. There's sometimes tangible and intangible benefits, and they use it as a marketing tool in order to raise more assets to support their businesses. And so it starts with your team, and the ability to vet those deals, because you have to have someone that's a good filtering mechanism as well. Not all, as I said at the outset, not all these deals are created equal. Who's behind them? What's their track record for actually delivering positive returns and positive outcomes in the deals that they're investing in?
And then to me, it's like it goes back to the work and the education of it. Take everybody, like you said, everybody's in your phone. Call everybody in your phone who has any type of knowledge on that. Take them to lunch. You spend, again, I'm saying taking people to $50 lunches, right? Go get Starbucks coffee, $5, right? You sit there for a half hour, you get that information. And some people, go take a homeless person to lunch. You'll learn what not to do. It's like you just educate yourself. If you really want more, everything is right in front of you to get more of whatever you want.
We're going to turn to Beverly's question now. How can female athletes who may not have the huge contract values of top men's athletes be forward thinking for their financial success after their career ends?
I think it's the exact same model. I think it doesn't matter if they make 50,000 or 500,000. I think you take the exact same model as, again, if you have Tom Brady's contract or your contract, your money can be making you money when you're 40, 50, 60. Like, that's the goal. And it's all going to go from your education, what to do, who do you invest, and how do you invest. But the model or the vehicle to me is the same thing, whether you're a female basketball player or Tom Brady.
I agree. I think the first step, like I stated before, is just taking the basic life skills of learning how to manage money. Prioritize your credit. Make sure that you save. Some people say save 20% of what you make, and invest in your future self. I think all of those things are important.
And there's one other thing. This is a Buffett term that I use all the time. It's time in the markets, not timing the markets.
Yep.
A lot of people sit around thinking, "Oh, well, let me wait." They start this day trading mentality, and I'm like, that's investing. That's gambling. That's trading. Compounding. Albert Einstein called compounding one of the greatest discoveries ever. Just think about the calendars on your side. So starting early with whatever amount you can afford to invest. And do it unemotionally if you can, because the psychology of investing is very difficult particularly if you're sitting there watching CNBC every day.
Yeah. So we're just about out of time. So we're going to kind of close it with one question. So we started with the question of why do athletes go broke? So I'm going to end it with this. So if there's like one piece of advice you can give to people, out there listening, or people who are going to watch this back, what would it be? Rory, you want to start?
Start early, but educate yourself. There's so many resources out there, even from the bank that you're working with. If you have a Chase Bank savings and checking account, or Citibank, or whatever local bank you work with, just on their website, there's tons of information. And we're in the information age, so having the excuse of not getting up the learning curve is not a good excuse.
Just invest in knowledge. The more you know, when you're having these conversations with financial guys and they have your bad intention, you're going to start asking the right questions, and you're going to scare the wrong guys away. So just invest in your self-knowledge. And something my dad always taught me that sticks with me: a fool and money soon part. So no matter how much money you have, if you're not educated, you're not doing the wrong things, it's going to disappear fast.
Again, to me, save, and educate. Again, don't be in a hurry to spend the money, to put the money somewhere, and how all these dreams and aspirations that you have, it'll be there, right? Just save it until you educate yourself on that type of investment. Then you'll know what amount of money to put in there, and you'll be knowing exactly what it is to start a business, or like I said, to start the rest of your life for investing.
Well, Rory, Clifton, Matthew, thank you so much. It was really an honor to moderate this conversation. Such a distinguished panel. As a reminder, this Accelerating Success Forum is really dedicated to constructive dialogue, exchange of ideas, and collaboration with the intention of enhancing the well-being of athletes and the sports industry at large. So conversation is just meant to start here today, and hopefully we can continue this in many spaces outside this broadcast. So with that,
thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks, Greg.
Take care.
All right,
Thanks, Greg.
Bye.
Bye-bye.